Well, hello all. Dr. Bruce here, welcoming you to the sixth episode of the Spiritual Hitchhiker's Practical Guide to the Afterlife and Beyond. And since I announced today's topic, is it possible to reincarnate into the past? It's garnered a fair degree of interest and comments. Actually, I see this topic posted regularly in this and other groups devoted to past lives, reincarnation, and life after death. So I decided to tackle it in terms of what I've learned, experienced, and researched in my almost 50 years in this discipline. And hopefully, what I'll be presenting tonight, or today, depending upon where you are, will do a little to stretch the boundaries of your beliefs and about reincarnation and what might be possible. Now, for some of you, after this show, you may never think about time, space, and your place in the universe the same way again. Time-wise, we tend to think of reincarnation in a progressive or a linear sense. We perceive our reincarnations as a series of lives lived one directly after another. In other words, if we led a life in the 15th century, the next life we lead might be in the 16th century. And then after that, the 17th century, and so on. But is this in fact so? Or does it need to be so? For example, after this particular lifetime, can we choose to come back in the 1800s or in ancient Rome or ancient Egypt, or for that matter, any other time and place that strikes our fantasy without relying on Doc Brown's DeLorean or Doctor Who's TARDIS for our friends across the pond? Early in 1902, J.W. Dunn, a British aeronautical engineer and philosopher, experienced a precognitive dream about the disastrous eruption of Mount Pelée on the French island of Martinique, which killed 29,000 people on May 2nd of that year. Now, this dream made him interested in the nature of time. And after years of experimentation with dreams and hypnotic states, Dunn wrote a book called An Experience with Time, in which he hypothesized that our experience of time as being linear is an illusion brought about by human consciousness. He argued that past, present, and future were in fact simultaneous and only experienced in a sequence because of the way our brain works. In other words, our conditioning. Surprising as it may be to most non-scientists and even to some scientists, Albert Einstein concluded in his later years that the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. Einstein's belief in an undivided solid reality was clear to him, so much so that he completely rejected the separation we experience as the moment of now. He believed there is no true division between past and future. There is rather a single existence. Now, his most descriptive testimony to this belief came when his lifelong friend Besso died. Einstein wrote a letter to Besso's family, saying that although Besso had preceded him in death, it was of no consequence. As he wrote, "For us physicists believe the separation between past, present, and future is only an illusion, although a convincing one." A number of modern quantum and physical and theoretical physicists are now echoing Einstein's argument. This has led those involved in the study of reincarnation to suggest that the apparent sequentiality of past lives, one after another, might merely be an illusion, a result of the limits of our current perceptions. Accordingly, some theories about reincarnation take this into account and assert that in actuality, as I said, all of our lives, past, present, and future, are occurring at the same time. So with the above in mind, we might then posit that an individual can choose to be reincarnated into a particular life at any point in history, past, present, or future. For example, if we meet our demise here in the first half of the 21st century, we may choose to be born again in chronologically past time frames. And when you think about it, what intriguing possibilities that presents. The concept of reincarnation typically involves a soul's journey through various lifetimes, often perceived as moving forward in time. However, the idea of reincarnating into the past introduces a fascinating twist, doesn't it? It's like pondering whether one could travel back to the golden era of Casablanca or the windswept romance of Gone with the Wind. From a traditional standpoint, most beliefs surrounding reincarnation focus on progression through time in a linear fashion. Yet, when we dive into the realms of quantum physics, which we'll do in a moment, and the non-linear nature of time as theorized by some, the possibility of a soul experiencing lifetimes in a non-chronological order becomes a tantalizing possibility. It's a bit like how Sigmund Freud delved into the unconscious mind, uncovering layers of human experiences not bound by the strictures of time. This first came to light for me in a couple of ways. A couple of shows back, I spoke about the different types of past life regression that I do. And I mentioned that there was a certain type in which I take the client back to the last life that they lived directly prior to this one. Every once in a while, some of them would describe a lifetime 1,000 years or more in the past, which didn't seem logical because I directed them to go back to the last life directly lived before this one. At first I wondered, well, what were they doing for the past 2,000 years or so? But when subsequent open-ended regressions, that's to say, instructing them to pick a lifetime of their own choosing and not necessarily the most previous life lived, resulted in these very same subjects reporting a lifetime much closer chronologically to their current lifetime, the nonlinear time theory then started to make some sense. This apparent ability to choose to be reincarnated in a subjectively past time may help explain the intense interest some people have with certain time periods, often bordering on obsession. So if you absolutely love anything ancient Roman, Renaissance, Civil War, Roaring Twenties, so on, you might indeed have lived a life back then. Not just once, but maybe several times. And maybe even quite recently, chronologically speaking. In theory, at least, we reincarnate with members of our soul group. And I think we all know what a soul group is. And also with larger generational groups that are a bit bigger than the soul group. And it may contain several soul groups. And in some views, our personal soul evolution is linked to spiritual evolution of humanity in general. So the general tendency would be to reincarnate into linear time future. However, if there is no linear time in spiritual dimensions, and if souls have the ability to incarnate into any time in physical reality, if they want to, it will be a different timeline than the one that they had incarnated into before, and would happen if the soul wants to repeat a lesson or explore a certain culture a bit deeper. So you would not meet yourself in a prior incarnation in this instance, or affect the timeline where you already lived. And that old grandfather paradox, where you could conceivably travel backward in time, kill your grandfather, and thus never be born, becomes a non sequitur. In other words, not valid. The first time I ran across this was about 40 years ago when I was doing past life regression seminars on a fairly regular basis. I'd usually have, 30, 40, 50 or more people in the room at the same time. And I would do multiple reincarnation sessions with them in the course of a full day. And I would question, and in between the questions, between the sessions, I would question them. And I started to notice that I would have attendees who would find themselves back in the same past life, but with subtle or sometimes not so subtle differences. And sometimes they would find themselves back in a past life as themselves. In other words, the person they are in this life. Again, with some subtle or not so subtle differences. And it was confusing the hell out of me. I'll talk about that strange twist in a minute, by the way. I used to think that maybe these people weren't paying attention to my instructions. Uh, I would bring this up to my colleagues, and they would report the same thing. And then I was introduced to the concept of reincarnating into the past. And it occurred to me that this might be more common than was being reported because maybe, maybe some of my clients were a bit reluctant to mention this because of, it just seems so strange. So it seems that you can go back into the historic past if your soul wants to. But in this case, you might have to incarnate within your soul, without your soul group, unless they also want to go back into history for some reason. So you might end up going it alone, unless some of your soul group are willing to go with it, to go with you. That might take some arm twisting. I found that you will also be only allowed to take on minor characters in this historical drama, and you really can't drastically interfere with the historical events, and you'll be interacting mostly as observers. So in case you're wondering, no, you can't go back in time and kill Hitler, for example. If past, present, and future are all taking place at the same time, this also begs the question, how might karma play out? At least the traditional concept of karma as payback, which some people subscribe to. For example, will the person who pours gasoline on an innocent animal or another person and lights them on fire be reincarnated back into for instance, Salem witch trials and be branded as a witch? You see where I'm going with this, don't you? Witches were tortured and then burned alive at the stake. What more ironic punishment could anyone possibly imagine? Believing in simultaneous time theory, reincarnation, and karmic payback might lead to a next life that sends you hundreds or even thousands of years back in time to insert you into that perfect moment befitting of your current soul evolution. By the way, I'm not necessarily saying that I believe in the payback theory of karma, although many people do. Now, in the future, probably about a month or so from now, I'm going to present an entire show on what I call the conundrum of karma, because it is quite a conundrum, and there are a number of vastly differing and conflicting views on karma. Now, in addition to all this, the notion of extra dimensions relates to the topic at hand, reincarnating into the past, and it also presents some intriguing possibilities. If we consider these additional dimensions as realms beyond our conventional understanding, they might provide pathways or channels through which consciousness could travel or transition between different states of existence. So when we say so-and-so transitioned instead of he died or he kicked the bucket, we might actually be speaking factually and not metaphorically. These dimensions, or the multiverse, could host different realities or realms where consciousness transitions to, intertwines, and interacts in intricate ways, including the possibility of reincarnation. Now, once the domain of science fiction writers, this extremely controversial theory is actually now supported by a number of well-known scientists. These are the physicists and the astrophysicists and the theoretical physicists who tend to agree with the existence of parallel worlds and who suggest the possibility of multiple universes. Multiverse, the contraction of the words multiple and universe, is a so-called scientific concept, which these physicists defend. They believe that no physical laws exist which would prohibit the existence of parallel worlds. Actually, the multiverse universe idea was first advanced by a Dr. Hugh Everett back in 1955 in his graduate thesis at Princeton University. He essentially posited that at any given moment the universe divides into countless similar versions, and the next moment these newborn baby universes split in a similar fashion. In one universe, you may be watching this video, while in another, you might be reading a book. In another, you might be walking your dog. As Everett explained, The triggering factor for these multiplying worlds is our actions. If we make some choices, apparently these are critical choices that we're talking about, not whether to have, bacon with our eggs, things like that. One universe instantly splits into two with different versions or outcomes. Other physicists scorned his theory, and Everett ended his physics career after completing his PhD. But the story doesn't end there. Everett was later vindicated when his theories were embraced by a number of prominent theoretical and quantum physicists as being potentially accurate. Well, according to the multiverse theory, in one universe the body can be dead, while in another it continues to exist, absorbing consciousness which migrated into that universe. This means that a dead person, while traveling through the same tunnel, ends up not in hell, not in heaven, but in a world similar to the one he or she once inhabited, and this time just left, but this time alive, and so on, ad infinitum. So there is an abundance of places or other universes where our soul could migrate after death, according to a theory called biocentrism, and that's advanced by a Dr. Robert Lanza. The man's a genius, by the way. And we'll be taking a closer look at Lanza and biocentrism in another show. Now, here's where it becomes, to quote Alice in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, curiouser and curiouser. In this abundance of places or universes, a soul may choose to reincarnate into one that may be as close as the one they just left, according to another theory, which I briefly touched on earlier. And an intriguing one, it is. This posits that we live our lives, past ones included, within certain time periods, generally within a time span of 150 to 200 years or so. For example, from 1850 to 2050. And we live a number of lives within that time period, learning the lessons and having the experiences we've signed up to learn and experience before moving on to another time span. Each of those lives are lived within an alternate universe or a time period, almost indistinguishable from each other, except that each alternate universe was created at a critical decision point. Remember Everett's theory? In this paradigm, we can reincarnate as ourselves if we choose into an alternate universe virtually indistinguishable from the one we just departed, except for some subtle, again, maybe not so subtle differences. For example, we might have pursued different careers, or went to different schools, or married different spouses in each incarnation or universe, which of course would necessarily lead to a whole different set of lessons and experiences. In this paradigm, the phenomena which we now know as deja vu, and I know you all have heard of deja vu, the literal translation of that is from the French, is already seen, then that deja vu would be literally true. In this paradigm, we had already seen and experienced the event or situation as ourselves in a past life, lived in an alternate timeline, close enough to the present one, so as to have virtually the same events and situations. I had a private client who had several lives as a serviceman in World War II, twice in the European Theater of Operations, once as an American foot soldier, and once as a British fighter pilot in the ETO, and one life in the Pacific Theater as an officer on the battleship Iowa, which we were able to find in historical records. They all, I think it might have been the New Jersey. It was the Iowa or the New Jersey. But they all overlapped in time and events in those lives. Almost like a repeat of the same story with minor variations. And I had another client who had led several lives as a Southern belle in pre-Civil War Southern states. They all overlapped in time. They were very similar in social class and events in those lives. Almost like a repeat of the same story with the minor variations. As a side note to this, a couple of weeks ago, we had a flood here in the downstairs when my office is located and where I'm coming to you now. And I call this the dungeon. Well, we had to replace the flooring, so I had to pack up everything. You know, the desks had to go out, all the books and the computers and what. One of the things I had to pack were my old high school yearbooks. A couple of days ago, I was working on the when I was working on the contents of this show, I was unpacking those things, and I looked at the yearbooks and I thought, why am I saving these? Maybe I should toss them. Then it occurred to me that if I did, and if these theories about reincarnating into the same life are correct, hey, I'll probably be getting these again in another lifetime. I couldn't bear to part with them, but it was a rather an odd thought, if I must say so. In the end, while mainstream science and traditional spiritual beliefs might not support the concept of reincarnating into the past, the vast and mysterious nature of the universe leaves room for endless possibilities. It's a reminder that, much like in hypnotherapy, sometimes unlocking the most profound truths requires venturing beyond conventional boundaries and embracing the limitless potential and possibilities of the mind and the soul. Quantum physics and quantum entanglement, which we'll discuss on a future show, at its core reveals a universe far more complex and interconnected than we once thought, where particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously, and events aren't strictly bound by linear causality. This quantum realm suggests the fluidity of time and space, where the past, present, and future might coexist in a quantum superposition. It's a bit like the plot of an old classic movie, where every scene is vital to the storyline, yet they exist independently and they can be revisited out of sequence. String theory adds another layer to this tapestry, proposing that the fundamental particles of the universe are tiny vibrating strings. These strings can oscillate at different frequencies, and their vibrations underpin the very fabric of reality. String theory is a candidate for the theory of everything, as it's called, which attempts to reconcile quantum mechanics with Einstein's general relativity, and suggests that our universe may be just one of many in a vast multiverse. Each universe could have different dimensions and laws of physics, potentially allowing for various forms of existence and consciousness. When we apply these concepts to the idea of reincarnating into the past, we're entering a realm of speculation that, at least to me, is both thrilling and complex. If time is not linear, but rather a more flexible dimension, as suggested by quantum mechanics, and if there are multiple universes with different timelines, as string theory might apply, then the soul's journey could theoretically take any path through time and space. This means reincarnating into the past could be conceivable in a framework where the soul transcends the conventional boundaries of time, experiencing lifetimes in order that serves its own growth and evolution. However, it's important to remember that these theories, while groundbreaking, are still in the realm of theoretical physics and have not been empirically proven to relate directly to the concept of reincarnation. But there is certainly highly suggestive anecdotal evidence when you look at some of the stories that are presented, and like I presented to you tonight. The bridge between these scientific theories and spiritual concepts like reincarnation is one built by speculation, philosophical inquiry, and admittedly a dash of imagination. In essence, discussing quantum physics and string theory in relation to reincarnating into the past opens up a universe of possibilities where the mysteries of existence, consciousness, and the soul's journey are explored in new, profound ways. It's a conversation that invites us to unlock our minds and empower our souls, pondering the infinite paths our spirits might traverse through the cosmos. The concept of reincarnation beautifully aligns with the understanding that eternity encompasses past, present, and future as one seamless tapestry. Our experiences are like cycles, And the frequency we attune to determines the chapters we revisit in this grand story of our soul's journey. Reincarnation may, in essence, be the opportunity to retune to a particular frequency of life or life experience that we've encountered before, this eternal dance of existence. It's a profound reminder that we, indeed, may not be bound by linear time, but rather we have the freedom to explore the various facets of our being throughout the ages. Of course, everything I've presented here today was just my 4 cents, 2 cents when adjusted for inflation. But maybe, just maybe, the immortal bard was right on when he tells us in Hamlet, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than I dreamt of in your philosophy." Before we close, a couple of things. And I also want to tell you about our next show. There are some projects I've been working on that might be of interest to you. The first is a 3-part, pre-recorded, downloadable master program which I've named The Soul's Journey, a triad of timeless exploration, which I just happened to complete just a couple of days ago. It consists of a collection of ebooks and MP3 audio sessions. As I said, it has 3 components. The first is a past life regression program, which gives you a choice of 6 different time periods in which to experience a past life. So every time you use it, you can end up going to a different lifetime. The second is an exploration of the Akashic records, which has often been described as the universe's cosmic library, and holding the endless chronicles of every soul's journey across multiple lifetimes. And the third component is a future life progression program, which, as the name implies, is a trip to a future lifetime. Now, that's just the basic information. After the show, I'm going to put up a post with a lot more details and ordering instructions. There'll be a link which will take you directly to a specific page on my website which will explain it in more detail and from which you can order the download if you like. You're going to see a price of $195. Don't pay any attention to that. As a member of this group, you'll be able to order it for 50% off that price. Actually, I've made it at even $97. In the post I'm going to put up after the show, you'll see a discount code to use at checkout. Now, if you only want one of the 3 programs, you can have the one of your choice for just $49. But you'll have to contact me directly, either through email or direct message, and I'll send it out to you, because that particular option isn't yet available on the website. And you'll also find a bunch of bonuses when you order all 3 for $97. Second, as most of you already know, I also train students in how to conduct past life regression and therapy and become a board-certified past life regression therapist. For more than 40 years, I've been doing this in live trainings and live classes, and lately been doing it live one-on-one online. I've decided to finally join the 21st century. Actually, I'm being dragged kicking and screaming into it. And I've been working on an online, on-demand, evergreen video training that looks like it's going to top out at 21 video modules, 5 audio modules, and a PDF training manual with scripts that'll be over with scripts now that'll be over 300 pages. There'll also be looks like 2 bonus video modules, one on how to conduct past life workshops which is a load of fun and very profitable, by the way, and the other on how to market your services as a past life therapist, and also a bunch of extra peripheral material which you'll need to do it right. Oh, by the way, you'll also get a year's free mentorship from me thrown into the mix. I expect everything to come together and be ready for release in about 2 months. I also expect it to retail in the $3,000 range. In the meantime, I'm going to release what's known as a beta version as a test run to get feedback from students and also work out the inevitable bugs, which I'm expecting. It'll contain everything in the final alpha version, along with the board certification and the mentorship from me. I'm going to offer that to an initial group of 10 people for just $500. I'm working out the logistical details of how to do that. Along with I'm also working on an informational document which will eventually become a web page and will explain exactly what the training contains. Now, there is a past life regression live training page on my website now, but the new video module training is going to be at least twice the size and twice the content. But if you visit the existing page, it'll at least give you a small idea of what you learn and get in the new online on-demand training. If this is something that might be of interest to you, in other words, becoming a full or part-time past life regression therapist, or incorporating it into an existing business or profession, at $500 instead of $3,000 just for agreeing to complete the program and giving me feedback about the beta version, then please drop me a line at either my email or direct message me, and I'll put you on the short list and get back to you when I'm ready to roll out that beta version, which should be in a couple of weeks at the most. Now on to our next show. I'm excited to announce that on Wednesday, August 14th, I'll be doing a one-on-one with Brownell Landrum. She's the creator and principal admin of a sister group to ours, Life is a Trip, Reincarnation, Past Life Stories, Afterlife, and more. She's also executive producer of the Life is a Trip Reincarnation Stories podcast, and she just happens to be the author of a dozen screenplays and books with a metaphysical message. I'm going to be talking to her about her extraordinary and very personal story entitled The End, which, by the way, is now available free. She's making it available free to all the members of this group. And I think she's tuning in tonight here. And so I'm just going to ask her to go ahead and post that on the group after the show so that you can see how to get that book for free. When I read this story that she wrote, The End, I was absolutely blown away. And I couldn't wait to share it with you. It's so fun, so simple, yet so profound, with many layers of deep, asking questions like, is the end ever really the end if it's a reincarnation story? Do you believe things, especially special relationship connections, happen for a reason? Have you ever wondered if events in your life might be being facilitated by a team of guides and angels upstairs? Now that's a really interesting concept that I've never really considered before. So join me 2 weeks from tonight on Wednesday, August 14th at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time for the next episode of the Spiritual Hitchhiker's Practical Guide to the Afterlife and Beyond. And for what is sure to be an incredibly fascinating visit with my special guest and friend, Brownell Landrum. And tell your friends about us. Remember, since this show is done within the Facebook group Reincarnation, Past Lives, and the Afterlife, they'll have to be a member to tune in. So a big thank you for joining me tonight. Until Wednesday, the 14th, and as always, this is Dr. Bruce wishing you happy hitchhiking, and happy trails. See you in 2.